Okay, what I've got here is one of my cardboard circuits set up, and the purpose for this demo is to hopefully explain Ohm's law, the math, because there is math associated with Ohm's law, and as you know, the formula that I recommend that we use is volts over ohms equals amps. Okay? I don't mess with E, I, and R. I just don't do it. I don't even bring it up. It's not even necessary. And this is a copper circuit trace the way that I've demonstrated in the previous video. If you notice right here, this demonstrates the flexibility because I needed more room to put in the fourth resistor, so I just threw a sticker in and jumped over the ground and then came back up in and tied into the ground up here. So my circuit is here. This is the piece of 32,000 solder that I use as a fuse that, by the way, I needed a little while ago because I forgot to cut that. So it was a dead short, and that popped. And you can just barely see a little trace there where the wire, where the solder resin kind of blew out. I've got a switch here, and I've got my ammeter. My ammeter is tied into the main board, and this switch allows me to either go through the ammeter or not. I added a switch so I can just solder in a switch and do what I want to do with that. And I've got these 4 resistors. So the setup is pretty simple. And again, I encourage this type of board because it's cheap, it's very effective, and it gives guys a chance to play around without risking. Sorry, I just had lunch. Allows guys to play around without risking a lot of high-tech, high-dollar stuff that, quite frankly, in my opinion, doesn't really teach them as much as if you just give them this stuff, give them a whole bunch of components and say, make stuff work. Okay, they'll figure it out. They're smart. They'll figure it out. The less we talk, I think, sometimes the better they do. I know that's true in my case lots of times. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through the math. I'm going to show you how this works with amperages and voltage drops and Ohm's law math to calculate all of those and to illustrate Kirchhoff's law as well, because the voltage drops all have to add up to source voltage. Okay, so here's how I'm going to start. I'll measure the voltage, and that'll be my voltage throughout. And then I'm going to start with the 100 ohm, and then I'm going to cut this circuit trace and add in the 50, and we should see the amperage change. And I'm going to cut this circuit trace to add in the 30, and we should see the amperage go down because we're adding resistance in series. And then finally, when I get to the 10, we should see the amperage go as low as it's going to go because we'll be at 190 ohms. The key here is to understand that as we add resistances into the circuit, all of these voltage drops have to add up to source voltage. They all have to add up to equal battery voltage. So in this case, here's what I expect. Because Ohm's law is proportional, the 100 ohm, if it's by itself, if this is the only one in the circuit, this is going to drop the full system voltage because it's the only resistance in the circuit. But then when I put in the 50 and the 50 starts working, a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, we will have increased the resistance in the circuit, so the amperage should go down. But notice the 100 to 50 or the 2 to 1 relationship. That means the voltage drop across the 100 is going to be roughly double the voltage drop across the 50. Well, I can go ahead and tell you what it's going to be because I've only got 12.5 volts. So the 100 is going to drop approximately 8.2, and the 50 is going to drop about 4.2. That's just the way the math works. If we add in the 30, we're going to go from 100 to 150 to 180, the amperage is going to drop again. And the same ratios will exist. This is going to be a 10 to 3, or roughly 3 to 1 ratio. And this is still going to be 2 to 1. And this is going to be 3/5 of this. And then when we throw in the 10, that'll keep going. So I'm going to try to do this in a way that you guys can follow and play back and repeat and play back and repeat as you need to see what's going on. So let's start by seeing what our system voltage is. And the system voltage is about 12.67 volts. Okay? So that's the number we're going to deal with. Now, as we turn things on, that voltage is going to drop slightly because that's what a loaded battery does. Voltage drops slightly. Okay? So my 100 ohm resistor, if I turn my circuit off and isolate the circuit, I should be able to read the resistance of 100 ohms just to prove it. And there's my 99.2 ohms, 100 ohms. Okay? So I got 100 ohms and 12.66 volts. I'll go back to volts here. I'll just do it in pencil right here. 12.66 volts divided by 100 ohms. I know it's going to be 0.0126. Excuse me, 0.126. Is that right? Yeah. Amps. Okay, now I can show you on the calculator because it's going to be 12.66 divided by 100 ohms. 0.126. 0.126, 0.126. So if I turn the circuit on, I get 0.12, 0.13. Exactly what I predicted. Exactly what we calculated. So that calculation works, and I'm seeing it on the meter. So I'm able to do this mechanically and mathematically. Okay? Now, that means the voltage drop across this resistor should be full system voltage, which is slightly less than 1266. Because, as I said, when you put a battery under load, voltage is going to drop slightly. So look at the numbers. I've got 12.55 volts dropping across a 100 ohm resistor, and that's giving me 0.12 amps. So as you're watching this, if you want to write these numbers down, 100 ohms, 0.12 amps, and 12.54 volts. Notice that the only resistor in the circuit, the 100, is dropping everything. That's Kirchhoff's law. Voltage drops must add up. Okay? So this is dropping 12.56 volts. Okay? 12.56 volts. Okay, well, what's going to happen when we put the 50 in? Okay? Well, let's do the calculation. 12.66 volts divided by 150. 0.084. Okay? So between 0.08 and 0.09. So when I cut this trace, this number should drop to about 0.08 because resistance is increasing. Sure enough, when I get it cut, it drops to 0.08. 0.08. Sorry, 0.08. Okay? So I've got 0.08 amps. Well, if I change this to 150, then 12.66 volts and 150 ohms gives me 0.085 amps. And that's about what we have. So it's totally predictable. Well, if I want to know the voltage drop across each of these, I use Ohm's law. Just go back to the same formula. So in this case, I'm going to have volts over ohms equals amps. Well, I know my amps and I know my ohms. So voltage drop will equal amps times ohms. So volts will equal amps times ohms. So my voltage drop is going to be whatever amperage is flowing through whatever resistance I have. Okay? So, let's see if we can do that. 0.084 amps times 100 ohms equals 8.4 volts. So, let's see if we get 8.4 volts. Oh, we get 8.35. We calculated 8.4, we get 8.35. Okay? Well, the formula worked. So, what else did we say? We said that the 100 is twice as much as the 50, so the 100 should drop twice as much as the 50 because it's 2 to 1. So, if we do the math there, we'll get 0.084 amps times 50 ohms equals 4.2 volts. So let's see if we get 4.2 volts. 4.16. Battery's tailing off a tad. Okay? So I've got 8.34 or 8.35 here, and I've got 4.16. Okay, so let's do this. 8.35 plus 4.16 volts equals 12.51 volts. Kirchhoff's law says it has to add up, and it adds up, 12.51. So we calculated 12.51, and if you're careful and use your math properly, you get 12.51. Okay, so Kirchhoff's law works. Ohm's law tells me what each will use. Kirchhoff's law tells me this plus this must equal the total. Okay? Well, what's going to happen when we add in the 30? It's going to go up to 180. So instead of being 150 ohms, it's going to be 180 ohms. So let's do the math there. It's 12.51 divided by 180. 0.069 or 0.07. So this should drop to about 0.07 when I turn on this resistor. And again, this has to remain 2 to 1, 10 to 3, and 3 to 5. The ratios have to remain the same. They have to do that. That's how it works. So when I turn on the 30, this number 0.08 should become 0.07. And sure enough, it drops to 0.07, between 0.06 and 0.07. We calculated it. I didn't write it down. And we get 0.07. So it works. Okay, now what about the voltage drops? Well, now we've got 0.07 amps. So it's going to be voltage drop equals 0.07 times 100, 0.07 times 50, 0.07 times 30. Okay? And let's see if this works. So, we've got 0.0695 times 100, 6.95 volts. So this should drop 6.95. That's going to drop half of it. So 0.0695 times 50 equals 3.47. So this should drop 3.47 volts. And then last of all, the 30, 0.0695 times 30 ohms is 2.08. 2.08 volts. Okay? So it's 0.07 through it all, but each resistor will drop a different amount based upon its resistance. So let's see if it works. Let's see if we get 6.95 here. Yep, that's what we calculated. Let's see if we get 3.47 here. .47. And let's see if we get 2.08. 2.09. So it works. Okay, now what if we add these up? All right, if we add them up, we get 2.08 plus 3.47 plus 6.95 equals 12.50. And let's see what we get. 12.5. Okay? So it adds up. Not only that, this and this are 2 times more than this and this. 100 is twice 50. 6.95 is twice 3.47. And 2 is 3/5 of 3.5. Do the math, it works out. Okay? So there's that. Well, it's continually working here. Okay? So what happens when we throw the 10 in? All right, let's see if I can remember to do everything this time. Let's erase these, erase this, erase this, because this is going to go to 190. Okay, well, that's not much more, so this probably won't be much less. Okay, so let's go to 190. Do the math. We're down to about 12.50. So let's multiply or divide that, by 190. We get 0.065 or 0.066. Let's see if this works. So let me open up this circuit trace here. And sure enough, now that current's flowing through all 4, it's dropped and it's down about 0.06. Okay? So I'm using amps because of the fact that Ohm's law does not use milliamps. Now this would be 60 milliamps, okay, and it's fluctuating, so we'll use 0.06. So it's going to be 0.06 amps. So that means all of these will have 0.06 amps flowing through them. And we just do the math again. So we get 0.0658, we'll call it 0.066. Multiply that times 100. 6.58. 6.58 volts. Okay? 0.0658 times 50. 3.29. .0658 times 30. 1.97. And finally, 0.0658 times 10 equals 0.658. 0.658 volt drop. Okay, let's do ratios first. 2 to 1. 6.6 is twice 3.3. Okay? 10 to 3, 6.6 is about 3 times more than 2. 10 to 1, 0.658 is 1/10 of 6.58. 5 to 1, 0.658 is 1/5 of 3.29. So this ratio is driven by that equation. So this has to drop more than this, and this has to drop more than this, and this has to drop more than this, and the math will make it clear that each of them drops an amount that's proportional to the rest. And they all have to add up to system voltage. So let's check the math and see if our math is right. So let's see if we get 6.58 volts. Okay, we get 6.6. And by the way, amperage is going up slightly because there's more resistance on the battery, which means there's less draw. So we got our 6.6. Let's see if we get 3.3. Yep, 3.28. We calculated 3.29. Pretty doggone close. All right, the 30, we calculated 1.97. And we get 1.979. 1.98. Pretty close. And then last of all, on the 10, we should get 0.658, and we get 0.66. And if we add them all up, 12.52. Right back where we started. Okay? Now let me point out the fluctuation in the batteries because the amount of load is changing, which means the battery voltage will slightly rise as we increase resistance. Okay? So that's the math. That's how it works. And it's actually pretty simple because this is the only formula you need to know. You can convert it to this. It's called transposing by just moving this, which is on the bottom on the left, to the top on the right. So you get volts equals amps times ohms. Volts equals amps times ohms. And then each individual voltage drop will be based upon the resistance of the component times its amperage. So as amperage drops, voltage drops. Okay? So here's the voltage of the system. Okay? And here are the voltage drops of the components in the system. 6.59. 3.28, 1.97, 0.658. Okay? So Ohm's law says that we can calculate amperage and voltage drops using that formula. Kirchhoff's law says that this plus this plus this plus this has to equal that. Okay? So if you can do this kind of math with these simple resistor values using voltages that we're going to be seeing in the real world, and you just play around, you're going to understand it. You can solder this back together and do it with 160 ohms, or you can solder this back together and do it with 140 ohms, or solder this back together and do it with 90 ohms. Doesn't matter what you use. If you do it right, the numbers have to come out right. So that's the math of Ohm's law. When it's time to learn it, I recommend you learn it like this, with the meters right in front of you, and try not to catch it on fire. But if you do catch it on fire, just beat it out with a meter. I think that's probably another function of the meter you don't know about. Works good, lasts a long time. Okay? Have fun.